The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and wilted flowers as Daniel stepped through the rusted iron gates of Blackwood Cemetery. The sun had just dipped below the horizon, casting long, skeletal shadows from the weathered tombstones. He'd come to visit his grandfather's grave, something he'd put off for months. But as he knelt to place the bouquet of white lilies, a cold prickle crept up his neck. Someone was watching him. Daniel turned slowly, scanning the rows of crumbling graves. At the far edge of the cemetery, near a gnarled oak tree, stood a figure, tall, unnaturally still, its face obscured by the deepening twilight. His breath hitched. Probably just another mourner, he told himself. But when he blinked, the figure was gone. Shaken, Daniel hurried back to his car, the crunch of dead leaves loud in the silence. As he drove away, his eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, and his blood turned to ice. The shadowy figure was now standing in the middle of the road behind him, its hollow gaze locked onto his. He slammed the gas pedal, heart pounding. That night, Daniel jolted awake to the sound of scratching at his bedroom door. 3 slow, deliberate drags, like nails against wood. Trembling, he reached for his phone's flashlight and aimed it at the floor. Muddy footprints led from the hallway to his bed. And at the edge of the light, something darker than the room itself shifted, and smiled. The flash of her camera lit up the wrought iron gates of Hollow Hill Cemetery, their twisted bars casting spiderweb shadows across the pavement. Marissa grinned, adjusting her lens for another shot. Midnight graveyard photography was her obsession, the older the tombstones, the better. But as the shutter clicked, her screen flickered with static. When it cleared, a blur of white stood near the far left gate. There was no one there a second ago. Marissa squinted. The figure, a woman in a tattered, ankle-length dress, stood perfectly still, her face obscured by strands of ink-black hair. The air grew heavy, the summer heat replaced by a gelid breath against Marissa's neck. She lowered her camera slowly. The woman was gone. Just a trick of the light, Marissa muttered, shoving her equipment into her bag. But as she turned to leave, a wet, ragged sob echoed from the gates. Her stomach dropped. It wasn't coming from outside the cemetery. It was right behind her. She ran, her sneakers slipping on dew-slick grass, not daring to look back. The sobs followed, growing louder, closer, until they weren't sobs at all, but laughter. Guttural. Hungry. At home, Marissa tore through her photos, deleting the ones with the woman. But in every shot, the figure reappeared, now inches from the lens. That night, she woke to the sound of dripping water. Her bathroom mirror was fogged, except for 2 handprints smeared across the glass. And beneath them, etched into the condensation, a single word. Soon. Rain drummed against the windshield as Jake's headlights cut through the darkness of Oakshade Cemetery. He shouldn't be here this late, the caretaker had warned him, but he needed to pay his respects before leaving town. His fingers trembled as he placed the flowers on his little brother's grave, the fresh mound of earth still smelling of damp soil. "Miss you, buddy," he whispered. A gust of wind extinguished his flashlight. Asterisk knock. Knock. Knock, asterisk. The sound came from the oak tree beside the grave. 3 perfect raps on wood. Jake spun around, his breath fogging in the sudden chill. The tree stood empty, its branches creaking like old floorboards. That night, Jake bolted upright in bed. The digital clock read 3:03 a.m. Asterisk knock. Knock. Knock, asterisk. The sound came from his bedroom door. Not the front door. Not the window. His bedroom door. The knob began to rattle as something pressed against the wood from the other side. The air smelled suddenly of rain and turned earth. When Jake's parents burst in moments later, they found him backed into a corner, staring at 3 muddy handprints on the inside of his door, small enough to be a child's. On his phone, the photo he'd taken at the cemetery showed something new, a pale face peering from behind his brother's headstone, its mouth stretched into a smile too wide for any living child. The joke had seemed harmless at the time. Paranormal investigator Liam Carter leaned against a moss-covered headstone in Willow Ridge Cemetery, his breath visible in the October chill. "All right, spirits," he chuckled into his recorder, "if anyone wants to come home with me, follow my black Dodge." He winked at his camera. No refunds. The first sign came as he drove home, his temperature gauge suddenly dropping to near freezing despite the heater being on full blast. Then the radio began cycling through static-filled stations before landing on a 1940s love song that hadn't been played in decades. That night, Liam's German Shepherd Rex stood rigid at the foot of his bed, growling at something in the corner where the shadows seemed thicker. When Liam turned on the light, he found clumps of fresh grave soil scattered across his hardwood floor. The incidents escalated, his shower running ice-cold at 3 a.m., his reflection blinking out of sync in mirrors, the constant smell of turned earth in his bedroom. But the worst came when reviewing his cemetery footage. There, clearly visible in his back seat as he drove away, sat the silhouette of a woman in a burial shroud. And she wasn't alone. The camera's night vision revealed small, childlike handprints appearing one by one on the inside of his car windows as he drove. Liam's joke had invited more than one passenger home. The golden light of dusk painted the cemetery in surreal hues as Sarah placed fresh daisies on her mother's grave. She lingered longer than intended, whispering secrets to the headstone until the caretaker's bell signaled closing time. As she turned to leave, a movement in her car's side mirror caught her eye. Her breath caught. The reflection showed her face, but wrong. The eyes were black pits, the mouth stretched in a grin too wide for any human face. Sarah spun around, heart hammering, but found only empty graves behind her. When she looked back at the mirror, her normal reflection stared back, pale and shaken. That night, brushing her teeth before bed, Sarah noticed something peculiar. Her reflection blinked a half-second after she did. The next morning, her bathroom mirror showed her with closed eyes when hers were open. By evening, the reflection began moving independently, running fingers through hair that remained still on Sarah's actual head. The final horror came at midnight. Sarah awoke to the sound of breaking glass. There, in the fragments of her bedroom mirror, dozens of distorted versions of herself grinned back with needle-like teeth. The largest shard showed her true reflection. Reaching out from inside the mirror.